Hi, and welcome to another edition of our podcast, Know What? We're continuing our conversation with Nadia Wilkie. She's the Project Development Officer with FundAccess. And today we're going to be talking about COVID 19 challenges and opportunities for business. Hi, Nadia. We're so glad to have you with us again.
Good morning. Thank you for having me and inviting me back.
Let's talk about COVID 19. In our last conversation, we were talking about how to set up a business. So today, we want to talk about some of the challenges. And I know sitting as project development officer and interacting with your clients and even meeting new clients, and based on all the information that's available globally, what would you say are some of the major challenges that businesses are facing in this COVID 19 pandemic?
Well, there have been several, it's uncertain, these are uncertain times, as they would say. And there have been several challenges that have come out of the various lockdown periods where the ability to earn either during a complete closure or seeing a significant reduction in the patronage of your clientele. Those are some of the major issues affecting businesses. So, of course, the profitability of the businesses would come into play or into question. You would also have challenges as it relates to their ability to maintain their operation under its normal existence. And so situations might come up where they're unable to pay their rent, so they can't maintain the location they have. They might be unable to keep their staff employed. There might be challenges dependent on the type of business that it is that relates to sourcing products. And let's say you are trying to source from a market that has had an extended lockdown. You might be in a position where your base product is compromised by lack of availability or changes in pricing.
So, what are the clients doing? What are they doing? How are they navigating the situation?
They're making a significant effort to pivot where they can. There are several approaches, and of course, different businesses can take different approaches. There might not be one blanket policy that can be the solution for all, either because of what stage of operation they're at or what their particular challenges might have been. There's situations where a person or persons might have looked at redefining what their service or product is, um, either by trying to source a new clientele or providing add on services or change of product for their existing clients. You also have situations where they might have looked at downsizing where necessary, and that might have caused the temporary layoff of staff, or in some cases, a permanent downsize until there's a clearer path of where we're all going to be.
This is interesting because how has that made them more aware of the deficit of of the business? Because yes, you feel the impact, low profitability. You may have to send home staff, but has this opened their eyes to say, okay, we really have to do this. We really have to do X or Y. Has it encourage them enough because some of them are demotivated. Has it encouraged them enough to say, all right, we may have to reset, we may have to retool. What are some of the ways that it has motivated them to make their businesses stronger?
Being an entrepreneur or a business owner is not for the faint of heart. And so there are there are natural or innate skills that seem to come to the fore when challenges come forward. And so we're definitely seeing the resilience in a lot of the clients or from the business sector as it stands in just making the effort to within themselves make changes or find solutions, and within the business pull resources that either exist or they are now kind of tapping into in order to make the change like because at the moment many businesses are trying to get to a stage where they're breaking even, where they can at least survive in order to really continue operating when all of this is over. And so you're definitely seeing that what might have been taken for granted before. And I would highlight maybe one or two examples as a clear understanding of your financial position, a clear understanding of what other avenues you can get into, or a clear understanding of just how to use your resources. You're definitely seeing not only a resilience, but a respect for some of those administrative obligations coming out. So they're definitely more, I find that the entrepreneur, the business owner, is definitely more aware of what can happen if you're not in control of your situation where the business is concerned. And they're definitely putting mind to thought, pen to paper, or networks into practice so that they can really navigate this difficult time.
Interesting word you use there, networking. When you refer to networking, what are you speaking about specifically, and how do you think this will help the businesses?
There are some businesses that have been able to either form new partnerships or take a look at how they can boost or utilize new connections. Networking is a very powerful tool to business because no man is an island. And at the end of the day, you actually have to either be able to engage your partners, whether it be the suppliers, whether it be your landlord, whether it be your clientele, and hear more about what needs to happen in order to make your business run smoothly or to spread your knowledge of your existence to a wider market. So networking can represent many different needs or many different aspects of the business that can actually make you more profitable.
What about networking overseas? Have a lot of them taken that into consideration? Because we realized that even though there was a lot of conversation about Barbados about moving to online platforms, businesses were forced to do that during the pandemic. So is this something that businesses are going to repeat, or is it something that they've used for that time and they want to go back to what they're accustomed?
I definitely think that COVID has opened the door to all of us to have a clearer understanding of how easily it is to operate on online platforms. I think now that simply with our meeting here, we can see a classic example of being able to have this conversation over Zoom. And I find that more and more businesses are taking the opportunity not only to engage or use the platforms that are now available to them, but they are a business that might have considered itself as a brick and mortar is now looking at how to reach clients without them having to come into their space. And so we've seen more steps towards e-commerce. We've seen more several businesses, especially within the food industry, look at becoming accessible and available online, where now persons can purchase or make their purchases online and either execute their collection by curbside pickup or delivery. And so definitely COVID has made the platforms more known and has definitely put persons in a position to use them, not only with the business owner, but with the clients as well, who've become a lot more tech savvy than they might have expected to. And so, to answer your question, yes, I believe that this is a practice, or these are practices that are going to carry forward even outside of COVID. And we've kind of been forced towards it, but we definitely see the value in utilizing online services and platforms.
You spoke about pivoting. So if you're doing an online platform, you talk about being able to order online, pay online, have delivery. How do businesses then have to up the ante, move themselves to a position not only to be comfortable in the space, but to really be profitable and excel because everything is changing so rapidly. So how would you advise them to move themselves to a position where they won't be caught off guard, they can possibly anticipate and of course be better prepared for situations that you have to go through with COVID and the pandemic.
One of the first steps is probably going to be having a good understanding of your business and its operation on a day to day basis so that you can observe changes when they come up, but also consistently be aware of the market and what it offers or presents so that you can make changes as necessary. To pivot quickly is probably the most effective way to actually navigate any situation, whether it be COVID, it could be something that happens during hurricane season, it could be flooding, it could be fire. And so there are different situations that can come out of the blue, and being able to not lose too much time when these things happen is important. Being able to reach your audience and reach your clientele is very important. So knowing what their needs are and anticipating how their needs might change also gives you the information you need to make changes within your business. Um, so there are a lot of different ways that you can actually make plans within your business to pivot. I think what's also important is it can be very easy to get comfortable where you are at, but having a plan for progression also gives you the forethought to be able to, if not anticipate, but have some kind of consideration for where you want to go. And in many cases, when changes occur, if you've already have some kind of insight or plan to where towards where you are going, you might then already have the basic foundation to make those changes.
How has COVID impacted employee and employer relationships? Because we have to take things into consideration of the employee's health, not only their physical health, but their mental health as well. They themselves have fears and uncertainties. You mentioned that there have been layoffs, those kinds of things. What do businesses, even if you have one employee, 10 employees, however many, what should be the focus? What should they be concentrating on as far as it pertains to their employees?
It all the things that you have mentioned are very important elements of maintaining your work-life balance. And I think that although it might seem like a buzz term, has become one of the main focuses during COVID-19. There are a lot of challenges that have affected employees, whether it be reduced hours, it could be the consideration they have now become the sole breadwinner in some of their households, with school being restricted as well, and with students being home, we found that some parents were navigating, they became teachers and employees, whether they were working from home or were part of the essential services and had to go out. And so employers have tried to make adjustments where possible to allow some flexibility to their clients, to definitely respect that there are new pressures that they might be under, while still hoping to have the, if those open doors of communication to understand what an employee needs are there, are present, there's the hope that you can create an environment where the employee is still able to meet their responsibilities at work, but also at home. I can say that I have seen a definite push towards employers trying to keep as many employees as possible. That has been a consistent theme throughout in the conversations with many clients where they've really hoped to keep their employees, whether it be reduced hours or, if it's just a temporary layoff, they're trying to really find ways to maintain that relationship with the employee and keep them with something going home. Um, so that has been a complicated and difficult part of the impact of COVID, because no one wants to see people just going home when you have had this person help you build your business over time.
What are some of the takeaways that can be kept from COVID? The hand washings and the temperature checks and the masks wearing at some point in time will end, but based on what has happened during the pandemic, what are some of the things that even though we didn't like them in the beginning, we realized that they have a practical benefit? What are some of the takeaways that you think for the employees? Because you mentioned working from home, and each business is different, so they have to deal with it in different ways. But what are some of the things that happened during COVID that we were forced to change how we do business that we could possibly keep going forward?
That's an interesting question. From an employee standpoint, I think the consideration that your your presence and your contribution to the business is recognized and important. Um, I think having an awareness of who is coming into your space and how you operate is also an important factor. Um, with with it becoming such an interesting or sensitive balance financially in maintaining your clientele and with competition becoming fiercer, as we're all competing, as all the businesses seem to be competing for similar markets, the customer service element of it has become also of high recognition, understanding that you are an ambassador for your business. And if your interaction with the client can actually speak volumes towards whether that client returns or not. Those are some of the considerations. Some of the flexibilities that have come out of COVID, I believe, are ways that employees and employers can look to take into the future to maintain that work-life balance and try to reduce some of the loss of time that can come when an employee has to stay home to operate or do something with their family. There, we have realized that with the use of technology, we're in a position to kind of still get stuff done even when we're not physically in the plant. And so I think there are definitely opportunities that have come out of the COVID-19 experience that can definitely benefit both the employer and the employee as we go forward.
As far as communication is concerned, do you think the communication between employer and employee has been affected by COVID? And if it has been, how do you think it could be improved?
Um, I can say that that hasn't been one of the complaints when I'm interacting with clients. Um, and that's where most of my information at the moment will come from, of interacting with the clients on the portfolio. And in a general sense, that situation can be considered fluid because there are some instances where employees have felt like they might not have had an opportunity to voice what their needs are. However, I think that there's been just the sheer ability of some of these businesses to have maintained their operation and going into what is probably the 18 months of the onset of the pandemic, and seeing that there are some small businesses that have still been able to keep their doors open even though they're operating at 40% reduction in their capacity or their revenue. I think that's testament to communication and consideration between the employer and the employee having been maximized on many levels. You know, it's a difficult situation, and not many of us had any experience with something like this before. And so I think a lot of people are trying to do their best and kind of learning as they go on how to operate and what decisions to make in these circumstances.
Investment. How are businesses operating, as you said, maybe at 40% capacity, able now to find investment, get that cash flow back up, borrow money? What advice would you give them now to help them to get back or surpass possibly where they were before the pandemic?
It's definitely a good time to plan. It's the time to take a look at your operation and address any deficiencies that might have existed and take a look at what solutions exist first. Having an idea of where you want to take your business is going to be important to any financial agency or any investor that you're going to approach. And it gives you an idea of what type of investment you're going to need, whether you need a small loan from a family member, which is temporary, and when we turn the corner, you might be in a position to pay off. It might be that you need a working capital loan right now, which can get you through this period. We don't have a clear indication of when this will end or when we will resume the ability to operate and trade at full capacity again. And there are many businesses which are just kind of they feel like they're playing the waiting game a bit, just trying to stay open until things turn around. So it even if this is not the best time to try to borrow, because I do know some clients are nervous about that or adding debt to debt, it might be a good time to understand where you want to end up when we come out of this. And understanding that will give you an idea of what type of investment you need and what level of investment you need.
So how do you manage that debt? How do you deal with the debt? What are some practical steps you can have? You there's outstanding monies that are owed maybe to your suppliers, to government agencies or to business agencies, whether it's taxation or loans or you have to pay NAS contributions. how would you walk businesses through to manage those processes? Should you pick up the phone and call? Should you send a letter? Should you go into a meeting? You said that some of them are hesitant about borrowing money. So walk us through the best way to be able to manage those situations.
Communication is key. It's very important to open the line of communication with, as you mentioned, there's several areas where you might have outstanding debts. There are also areas where you might have receivables incoming, and opening a line of communication with persons you owe or who owe you is very important. There, I think in almost every area, the financial agencies and by extension your landlords, etc., your creditors, they have a clear understanding of what is going on now. And they might be able to work with you to make payment arrangements. The transparency is very powerful right now because you have an opportunity to have a conversation about what you can do and when you can do it. And sometimes silence can be more detrimental to a situation, or you feel the automatic need to try to disappear, but that might not be practical. That is not healthy, especially since you expect to continue business going forward. It's very important to open those lines of communication and have a discussion about what's possible. Here at FundAccess, we are exploring the opportunities that are the possibilities that when we come out of the COVID situation and where possible, we can look at assisting clients in restructuring or refinancing their positions so that when we turn the corner, I, as I would say, that they're in a position where they get to restart their position. For those businesses which will definitely be able to recover, we think that that's going to be very important in being a part of their recovery plan.
So the first thing to do is pick up the phone. Oh, sorry, I'm here. Go ahead.
So I would say that I imagine several different agencies will have a similar outlook on assisting their clients.
So the first thing to do and the best thing to do is to pick up the telephone and have a conversation and touch base and to start that open that line of communication that you spoke about.
Definitely, that's the first step. And from there, you would get a good indication of what is possible with those various agencies or the debtors. And knowing that, you can then prioritize your debt and go back to the drawing board and take a look at, okay, under if let's say you're operating at 40 or 50% capacity, you can then decide or determine where you can place your priorities and where you can make cuts in order to satisfy as many of those responsibilities as possible, whether it be through a reduced payment, it could be that you might need a moratorium period. There are different approaches that can be taken, and different financial agencies will actually have positions on what is possible. So the communication is key at a time like this.
We talked about getting maybe temporary measures for cash flow of maybe getting a loan from a family member or a friend. Now sometimes people say family and business don't mix. So how do you protect yourself and protect the person that you're borrowing money from? Because if you go to a bank or you come to your agency, there's documentation, there's a contract. Should you do something like that? Is that important? Is it necessary? Or a handshake or a word of mouth is enough?
But in the Caribbean, we have always approached things from a word of mouth perspective, but you do see indications of communication breaking down or that situation breaking down. Having a good understanding of what you're committing to is important. So if you are going to make an arrangement to borrow from a family member and you're saying, well, in 6 months I should be able to pay you back, you should have an idea of what your business is going to be doing in 6 months. There's no crystal ball to this, but having a clear idea of where you are and how business is operating or trading now, you can track a trend and have a good idea or a time frame that you can honor with that family member. Communication is then going to be important there too. So if you're unable to make the payment, you communicate that with the family member, friend, or investor who's going to lend you that money. But yes, I agree that you can create a contract of sorts. Should the conversation with the person you are borrowing from feel as though they would feel more secure with a document being put in place, You can also consult the legal fraternity in order to, or justice of the peace to have it officiated. So there are different approaches you can take, but it's dependent on how much you need and who you're borrowing it from.
What about collaboration and bartering? For example, I have a small business and I need something done, and I may not have the capital to be able to pay, but I know that this is going to make money, or that I know funding for this is going to come in down the road. Would you advise maybe reaching out and collaborating and working with someone who can offer the particular service or skill it is that I need, and then maybe with no exchange of funding or no exchange of money, that I can probably in exchange give them, provide a service for them. Do you encourage these kinds of relationships as far as business is concerned, and are they practical?
It depends on the culture that you're operating in. And I would, it is difficult to advise or steer a person in that direction. I would say that normally my approach and our approach here at FundAccess is to open the line of communication or a conversation between clients where possible to understand how they can network and what that means. Their arrangements then, when listening to what the conversation is, etc., we try to encourage persons to enter even if you don't have a physical contract, understanding what your verbal agreement or contract would be. Um, it requires having a clear understanding of who you are making that commitment to, because you both have to honor your ends of the barter or the agreement. However, I do think that there's definitely a strength and a power in being able to not only collaborate, but to form arrangements where, let's say, you have a food business and they form a strong partnership with a farmer who can then be the main supplier of their produce. That farmer has the confidence that if they grow X, Y, and Z, they know that based on the capacity of the business or the pattern of purchase for that business, they will be, you know, the first person who can take their product and they feel a little more confident about guaranteed sales. And coming out of COVID, I think we definitely look at the strength of working within your community and how the community itself can grow if we can all look at each of us representing a slice of the pie. So there's a power in it, but it does require honor in your commitment and loyalty in how you approach your business practices.
We've seen an uptick in prices. You go into the supermarket, and the supermarkets did warn us that price of food is going to go up, and it has gone up. How do businesses decide how they're going to change their pricing? Should they make their prices lower? Should they make their prices higher? How do you advise them on pricing?
You have to consider what the market can handle because you don't want to price yourself out of the market where you're looking at you're considering what your clientele can afford. I I personally advise persons not to pull figures from the sky. You have to have a clear understanding of what the pricing or the costing, sorry, of production is. And then there are markups that you can consider that might be either the industry standard or might offer a fair profitability for you and your business, but also be competitive within the market. And those elements are very important because you could have a great product, but persons can't afford to purchase it. And so having a good idea of a clear understanding of the climate that you're going to be trading in or selling in is very important.
You touched on something earlier, which I want to go back to. You said, I like this word pivoting because it's so important. And it kind of ties in with the pricing too. If you've realized that your product did not do so well during the pandemic, does that mean that you're to give up that and say, okay, I'm finished with that, I'm done? It didn't do well. Let me try something else, or um, put that to rest and do something else with the expectation that it could probably come back again. or do you add it? I mean, how do you navigate these waters where you realize, oh, well, my service is not something that was needed during the pandemic, so maybe I really shouldn't be in business?
The pandemic is a unique circumstance. It's going to be difficult for businesses to make decisions based on the impact of COVID 19. Um, Assessment is an important factor at any stage of your business, whether it's normal operation during a pandemic, after a fire, regardless of what situation you're in, having an assessment, a plan to assess your business on an ongoing basis is important because once you have information, it's it's the main tool that can help you to make a decision as to whether my business is only having a challenge right now during COVID. But I know that when persons can either come out in numbers or they're more comfortable with being out and about or they have more spending, increased spending power, I can see how I might be able to raise my head in the business climate and industry or my particular industry again. Right now, there are some industries that are feeling the pinch for either a bit longer or harder than other industries, simply because they're not allowed to or they're not in a position where they can operate at full capacity because they have to consider what could happen if they do have numbers. And it's not necessarily an indication that they should give up on that particular service or that product, but it means that they might need to look at how they can streamline the product to actually at least stay in operation or maintain their position in the market with plans to with plans of rebirth when we can operate as normal again.
Skills and upgrading of skills within the business itself, without having a lot of money, even to bring the business back to full capacity. And you need to have this upgraded skills, and you have to retrain your staff. How do you advise businesses through situations like that?
Definitely, it's been a longer time than any of us anticipated, but that has definitely been the approach that many business owners and entrepreneurs have taken. They have looked towards or taken the downtime as an opportunity either to plan on how they'll make changes, but also to retool. And that retooling could mean that within themselves, they're looking at learning new skills or improving on existing skills. But they've also looked at being able to train their staff in ways where they can take on either more responsibility or they can execute new skills when new services are added in a different time in the future. So it's definitely been an opportunity to take advantage as well of online training. There have been several online platforms which have offered either free training, sorry, or they have offered masterclass series, or they've been offering opportunities to forums or seminars where you can actually be part of a learning experience on how growth can be attained even within a pandemic or after a pandemic. So it's definitely an area that we should all be looking into a lot more actively in order to make sure that we learn from what can be considered a challenging time, but we can also take some of those skills and learn from others in order to benefit at the end of all of this.
And restructuring it and putting systems in place so that even if it is affected, it can be resilient. And these things speak to corporate governance and how you're going to deal with these situations. Who is going to do what? Who is responsible for what? How do we communicate when this happens? Have you found that a lot of the businesses coming to you realize, or maybe we don't have that in place and now we have to put it in place, or we have it in place and we have to improve upon it? What was some feedback that you've been getting, and how can the businesses move forward to improve their corporate governance?
Well, we work with a lot of micro and small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and normal practice was often trading on a day-to-day basis. And it has definitely not only opened up the mindset, but brought an understanding to some of the conversations that we as officers have been having with clients over the past couple of years. to consider or prepare for the rainy day, so to speak. And there have definitely been areas where clients have recognized where they need to make those changes and improve, as you said, their corporate governance, their practices of corporate governance, and to look at their continuity plans as well. So it has really opened up the conversations for improvement of the operations and the organizational behaviors of the business. And that in itself, although we're still not in a place of recovery yet, that in itself gives us hope that the businesses and their structures will be stronger with all that has been done or recognized or changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic or the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Before we go, Nadia, I want you to tell me three takeaways from this chat that we just had, this conversation. What would be three things that you believe are very important for our listeners and our viewers? Those three takeaways from our chat today.
Hmm. I think that knowing your market is important and a constant assessment of your operation to have an understanding. Although we didn't get a chance to go into it, I think that coming out of our conversation, one thing that I would like individuals, business owners, existing operators, or if you're going to get into entrepreneurship going forward, is to look at diversification of the market. Consider that although you might be in a position where you need to start earning an income, we're all looking at the same pool of clients very often. And it's a very competitive market out there. And being able to bring something either new to the table or being able to reach your audience in a new way can give you the edge to either solidify your position in the market or increase your brand representation and your clientele. And to have a good understanding on what it costs to execute your service or manufacture your product is very important so that as the financial climate changes, whether it be a recession, whether it be COVID 19 or natural disaster, you are in a clear position to use the information and the knowledge that you have been collecting over time to either pivot your business or reposition the product or service itself so you can at least remain competitive and operational in a time of challenge.
Nadia, thanks again for chatting with us. Diversification is an important part of business, and we want to make that a full conversation. So that will be one of the topics that we're going to be looking at in depth. You made a good point that the time is now to be able to do that. I thank you again, Nadia, for being on the Know What podcast. I will look forward to having you again.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you on future podcasts.
So we'll be back on Know What. Stay tuned for right here on our Facebook page for another edition of Know What.